This is our group project on top-down and bottom-up processing. Our brains are exceptionally complex machines, each one capable of completing complex tasks and processing and storing terabytes of information. In order to keep up with the immense strain placed on it, the brain has a number of mechanisms for processing new information. Two of the most important of these mechanisms are top-down and bottom-up processing. Top-down processing is the method in which our brains process information by beginning with a large concept and then working down toward more detailed information. Bottom-up processing is the processing method in which our brains perceive information given the sensory input it receives.
Bottom-up processing refers to the use of sensory perception such as taste, touch, sight, smell, and hearing to understand and immediately process our surroundings. An example of this form of processing is if an individual was offered their favorite flavor of ice cream, but it was topped with abnormal exotic toppings such as pickles or hot sauce, chances are they would turn it down immediately without having to give it a first thought. The reason the ice cream would be rejected without having to stop and assess is due to bottom-up processing. Bottom-up processing, simply put, is about the processing moving in the opposite direction. First comes the response in the body, the eyes observe the contents, there is a present unfamiliar and unpleasant mixture of scents. Then this leads to an emotional response, repulsion and disappointment. And finally, the brain's cognition and directive for action, which would be refusing the desired product. This example demonstrates how bottom-up processing starts with the body and ends with the brain.
The brain also processes with top-down processing. We can see this in a practical and applicable example of discrimination. The brain is attempting to fit things into categories. In the image on the slide, we can see A, B, C, and 12, 13, 14. Depending on the context, a very similar, often identical image can be placed into two distinct categories based off of that context. We have to be careful not to do the same thing with people. We must avoid discrimination, and we must recognize that it is a top-down processing problem.
The process that the brain uses to gather new information, called top-down and bottom-up processing, depends on what it is the brain is remembering. While top-down is using ideas to interpret sensory information, bottom-up is actually taking that sensory information and assembling it. Bottom-up deals with our senses, while top-down has to deal with our brain. We see these processes play out in our society with the example of racism. The way humans process things stays the same, but what we choose to process is up to us.